This is the Sabbath School lesson for the fourth quarter, 2021.
Lesson 11 from our series Present Truth in Deuteronomy is titled Deuteronomy in the Later Writings, ready for teaching on December 11, and I'm Percy Harrold. Wednesday, December 8. What does the Lord require? So much of the writings of the prophets consisted of appeals to faithfulness, and not just faithfulness in general, but in particular faithfulness to the Israelites' end of the covenant, which was reaffirmed just before they entered the land. This is what the book of Deuteronomy depicted, the reaffirmation of God's covenant with Israel. The Lord was now, after the 40-year detour, about to fulfill, or to begin to fulfill, more of his covenant promises, his end of the deal. Thus Moses admonished the people to fulfill their end as well. Indeed, much of the writings of the prophets was basically the same, appeals for the people to uphold their side of the covenant. Read Micah 6 verses 1 to 8. What is the Lord telling the people there, and how does it relate to the book of Deuteronomy? We'll also look at Amos 5:24 and Hosea 6 verse 6. But first of all, Micah 6 beginning at verse 1. Hear now what the Lord says. Arise, plead your case before the mountains, and let the hills hear your voice. Hear, O you mountains, the Lord's complaint, and the strong foundations of the earth. For the Lord has a complaint against his people, and he will contend with Israel. O my people, what have I done to you, and how have I wearied you? Testify against me. For I brought you up from the land of Egypt, I redeemed you from the house of bondage, and I sent before you Moses, Aaron, and Miriam. O my people, remember now what Balak king of Moab counselled, and what Balaam the son of Beor answered him from Acacia Grove to Gilgal, that you may know the righteousness of the Lord. With what shall I come before the Lord and bow myself before the high God? Shall I come before him with burnt offerings, with calves a year old? Will the Lord be pleased with thousands of rams, 10,000 rivers of oil? Shall I give my firstborn for my transgression, the fruit of my body for the sin of my soul? He has shown you, O man, what is good. And what does the Lord require of you? But to do justly, to love mercy, and to walk humbly with your God. And Amos 5:24, but let justice run down like water, and righteousness like a mighty stream. And Hosea 6 verse 6, for I desire mercy and not sacrifice, the knowledge of God more than burnt offerings. Bible scholars have seen in these verses in Micah what is known as a covenant lawsuit, in which the Lord sues or brings a case against his people for violation of the covenant. In this case, Micah says that the Lord has a complaint against his people in verse 2, in which the word complaint, riv, R-I-V, can mean a legal dispute. That is, the Lord was bringing a legal case against them, imagery that implies the legal besides the relational aspect of the covenant. This shouldn't be surprising because, after all, central to the covenant was law. Notice, too, how Micah borrows language directly from Deuteronomy. And this quote is from Deuteronomy 10, verses 12 and 13. O now, Israel, what does the Lord your God require of you, but to fear the Lord your God, to walk in all his ways and to love him, to serve the Lord your God with all your heart and with all your soul, and to keep the commandments of the Lord and his statutes, which I command you today for your good. Instead, though, of quoting it directly, Micah modifies it by exchanging the letter of the law of Deuteronomy for the spirit of the law, which is about being just and merciful. What seems to be happening here is that whatever the outward appearance of religion and piety, lots of animal sacrifices, that is, thousands of rams, that's not what constitutes Israel's covenant relationship with God. What good is all this outward piety if, for example, they covet fields and take them by violence, also houses, and seize them, so they oppress a man and his house, a man and his inheritance? Micah 2, verse 2. Israel was supposed to be a light to the world, about which the nations would say with wonder in Deuteronomy 4 verse 6, "Surely this great nation is a wise and understanding people." Hence, they were to act with wisdom and with understanding, which included treating people with justice and mercy. This lesson was read by Dr. Percy Harrold for Christian Services for the Blind. Sponsored by the Sabbath School Department and distributed through Hope Channel Australia, this podcast is also redistributed by Hope Channel Germany, Christian Record Services for the Blind, and It Is Written. It is also available on SoundCloud and through multiple podcast distributors, including Apple iTunes. Remember, God is always faithful.